What is the role of the volumes section in Docker Compose and how does it ensure data persistence for the Postgres container? And how different services in a Docker Compose work together? But before we begin, if you haven't watched the video on how to create a Docker Compose configuration, please watch it first. I'll leave you the link in this corner. In this lesson, we are going to go ahead and add our database service to our Docker Compose configuration. So let's go ahead and open up our project in Visual Studio Code. And we are going to open up the docker-compose.yml. So currently we have one app service here called app that starts in line 4, and we are going to add another block below this for our database service. So let's go ahead and do that. It's very important to pay attention to the indentation. So we just need to make sure the database service is defined at the same level as the app service. So I'm going to type db colon, which is the name of the service, and then image colon. This is the image that we are going to be using from Docker Hub. So if you go to the Docker Hub website and search for PostgreSQL, you find the 17-alpine tag there. So we'll add the volume next, and again pay attention to the indentation. This needs to be level with the start of the file. Then I'm going to type volumes colon and then dev hyphen db hyphen data and then colon. So it's going to be the name of our volume. We don't need to add anything after the colon here because this is going to be handled automatically by Docker Compose. It's just going to store it in the default file system location used for named volumes. And then we go ahead and go back to our DB block and we will type here volumes dev hyphen db hyphen data. This name should match the name here. Then the colon /var /lib /postgresql and finally /data. As I mentioned on the previous video, if you check the official Postgres documentation or the Docker Hub page for the Postgres Docker image, you will find the exact path where the data is stored. That's how I determine which location we need to map to our volume. Now, below volume, we are going to add the environment. So I'm going to type Postgres underscore. I'm going to copy it. So Postgres underscore db is equal to dev db. You are free to change any name you want. Postgres underscore user equal to dev user. And finally Postgres underscore password. For example, my name underscore my family name. What this does is it set 3 environment variable. You can probably guess what these do, but basically they're used to set the initial database configuration for our new DB service. So when our database starts for the first time, it's going to create a database named devdb inside Postgres. Then it will create a user called devuser and set the password for that user to Faraz underscore Rezai. These credentials are just for our local development setup. This isn't what we would use in a real deployment environment. In that case, you should never hardcode actual credentials in your source code. So it doesn't matter too much that these are obvious username and password because this database won't be publicly accessible. It's purely for local development. It's running only on our local machine and only we can access it from there. So next, we need to add similar environment variables to our app service. This will tell our app how to connect to the database. Later on, we will configure Django to use these values for the database connection. So below this line here, we are going to type environment db underscore. So db underscore host, it's equal to db. This is the host name of the database. Since we are using Docker Compose, we can use the name of the service as the host name. In this case, DB is the name of the service and it will be used as the host name to connect to the database. And then DB underscore name, it's equal to dev DB user, it's equal to dev user, and finally pass is equal to Faraz underscore Rezai. These values here should basically match what we have here in the DB service. And you can use your own values if you want, but just make sure that they match the values that you set here. Then finally, below environment here, we are going to add a new block called depends on. And this just tells Docker Compose that the app service depends on the DB service. So it will try and wait for DB service to start before it starts the app service. And if the DB service should fail, then it will automatically assume that app is going to fail. Okay, so once you save the file, we will check that everything works by opening the terminal up and running docker hyphen compose space up. This should start our services and you will see that it initializes the database service. So everything should be up and running. So as you see here, because we didn't get any errors, we know that we have configured Docker Compose correctly, and now we can move on to the next lesson. So I want to make you smile. Why don't Docker containers ever gossip? Because they prefer to stay in their own isolated environments.